Good evening. It's November 12, 2025. You can feel it, that sharp current in the air that runs through Washington whenever something big breaks, whenever the calm surface of politics fractures and something raw, something uncontrollable, starts to rise beneath it. Tonight, that current has a name, Zohran Mamdani. A man almost no one outside New York had heard of 6 months ago has subtly become the center of a political storm that's rattling both parties. And the reason? Because his plan, the one no one was supposed to read, let alone understand, just got exposed. Now, if you're watching mainstream television tonight, they'll tell you this story is about an election, about numbers, turnout, local politics. But it isn't. It's about power and the people who believe they're entitled to it. It's about what happens when someone inside the system, someone who knows how the machinery works, decides to use it for something far bigger than a campaign. Mamdani didn't just run for office. He ran an operation, one that reached into the shadows of policymaking, data mining, and ideological engineering. And now that the curtain's been pulled back, everyone's scrambling to decide what it really means. Here's what we know. After the New York election results came in, Trump didn't waste a single hour. He sent a message, not a statement, not a soundbite, but a warning. One that every insider in Washington understood immediately. It wasn't about votes. It was about exposure. About calling out a structure that's been hiding in plain sight for years. Because the truth is, the political game isn't between Republicans and Democrats anymore. It's between the visible government and the invisible one, the networks of strategists, consultants, and ideologues who've learned how to steer both sides toward the same destination without ever stepping into the spotlight. And that's where Mamdani comes in. He represents something new, something dangerous to the establishment because it's unpredictable. He's not a billionaire donor, not a corporate lobbyist, not even a career politician. He's a symbol of the ideological machine that's been quietly constructing a new kind of politics, one that doesn't play by the traditional roles, one that uses morality as a weapon and outrage as a marketing tool. His plan wasn't about legislation, it was about narrative, reshaping the emotional DNA of the electorate. And for a while, it worked. Until now. When Trump's message dropped, just hours after the NYC results, you could feel the temperature in Washington rise. Suddenly, newsrooms were in panic mode. Editors rushed to rewrite their leads. Talking heads tripped over their teleprompters trying to frame the story without admitting what everyone already knew: someone had crossed an invisible line. For years, Trump has been portrayed as reactionary, chaotic, unfiltered. But this time, his response was deliberate. Surgical. He didn't just react, he revealed. He connected dots that no one was supposed to connect, linking campaign operations, policy think tanks, and funding flows that trace back to an entire ecosystem of ideological influence. And that's what terrifies them. Because for the first time, someone in the public eye didn't just hint at the existence of this machine, he named it. He showed people how politics actually works in the shadows, through data pipelines, foundations, coordinated messaging, and media amplification. The shutdown story was about money. This one is about belief, about how public opinion is manufactured, tested, and weaponized long before a single vote is cast. I've said this before, but it's never been more relevant. The most powerful forces in America aren't the ones you see arguing on cable news. They're the ones writing the arguments. They're the speechwriters, the analysts, the strategists who live in the gray zone between activism and governance. They know that if you can shape emotion, you can shape consent. And that's exactly what Mamdani's plan was built to do, to merge emotional politics with digital precision, creating a system that could steer national discourse without ever needing national approval. And here's the uncomfortable truth: it almost worked. For months, this ideological infrastructure operated undetected, influencing policy discussions, shifting narratives, even determining which social issues would trend and which would vanish. It was all meticulously calibrated, until Trump's post-election message blew a hole straight through it. Now, the panic you're seeing across the political spectrum isn't just about exposure. It's about what happens next. Because once a hidden system is revealed, it loses its power. And for a political class that spent decades perfecting the art of invisible influence, that's an existential threat. You can't manipulate people who know they're being manipulated. You can't sell illusion to someone who's seen the stage lights. But this story isn't finished, not even close. Because what's unfolding right now isn't just a scandal. It's a confrontation between two worldviews, one that believes in managing perception, and another that believes in exposing it. The fallout from this, the retribution, the denials, the desperate attempts to redirect blame, is already beginning. And if history is any guide, the louder they deny it, the closer we are to the truth. So tonight, don't get lost in the noise of partisan commentary or social media outrage. This isn't about who won an election. It's about who's writing the roles for the next one. It's about the people who believe they can redesign democracy without ever admitting they're doing it. Trump's message didn't ignite this firestorm, it revealed it. And that's why the establishment is terrified. Because fire spreads. Awareness spreads. And once people start seeing the connections for themselves, there's no putting the smoke back in the bottle. When a politician lies, it's rarely a solo performance. There's always a team behind the curtain, speechwriters, handlers, donors, editors, each one playing their part in keeping the illusion alive. And in the case of Zohran Mamdani, that illusion was engineered with precision. His words were polished, his image carefully molded, his authentic passion rehearsed until it felt spontaneous. But what no one in the establishment expected was that voters would eventually connect the dots. Because once people start seeing patterns, the recycled phrases, the coordinated talking points, the media synchronization, they realize it's not democracy they're watching. It's choreography. You can trace this scandal like a map of Washington itself. Mamdani didn't fall because of one misstep, he fell because the script was too perfect for too long. For months, he was framed as the conscience of the new progressive left, the moral compass of Schumer's political lineage. But behind that halo, emails were exchanged, donations redirected, policies softened in the name of strategy. Every time a journalist got too close, another story conveniently appeared to distract. And who approved those diversions? The same offices now pretending to be shocked by his betrayal. Here's what most people don't understand. Washington doesn't operate on ideology anymore. It operates on alignment. It's about who plays along, who sticks to the talking points, who knows how to survive a scandal by shaping it before it breaks. Mamdani's lie wasn't unique, it was routine. The only difference is that this time, the routine was exposed in real time. When the first leaks hit social media, you could see the panic in Schumer's camp. The responses were textbook damage control, first deny, then deflect, then redefine. Within hours, the phrase miscommunication started trending. Within a day, talking heads on cable news were telling viewers that context was missing. But what's missing isn't context, it's honesty. The system isn't built to handle truth, it's built to absorb it, twist it, and turn it into noise. And that's exactly what Schumer's team tried to do. They thought they could ride it out, that the public would move on to the next controversy before the story fully developed. But this time, people didn't move on. They dug in. They replayed interviews, compared statements, exposed contradictions. The same tools the establishment once used to control perception, video, sound bites, social media, are now being used against them. And that reversal has them terrified. You can see it in the way Schumer speaks now, the measured pauses, the softened rhetoric, the attempt to sound in touch. But no amount of sincerity training can hide the fatigue of a man who spent decades managing objects instead of outcomes. The voters who once saw him as a steady hand now see something else, calculation, not conviction. And when a leader's words start sounding like equations, trust dissolves fast. Mamdani was supposed to be the face of renewal. Schumer thought he was building a bridge to the future. Instead, he built a detonator. Because once the public saw how coordinated and transactional idealism had become, they began questioning every polished soundbite coming out of Washington. If the crusader for justice was a fraud, what does that make the rest of them? The tragedy of this moment isn't that one man lied. It's that so many powerful people helped him do it, and then pretended to be surprised. That's how the elite class protects itself, through collective denial. They're not angry that Mamdani deceived voters, they're angry that he failed at it. Because when one player drops the mask, the whole act loses credibility. This isn't the first time the establishment has been embarrassed by its own creation. But it might be the first time the audience refused to clap. There's a fatigue setting in, not apathy, but recognition. People are beginning to understand that corruption doesn't always come in the form of bribes or scandals. Sometimes, it comes in the form of carefully scripted sincerity. So yes, Mamdani's downfall has Schumer humiliated, but not because of moral outrage. It's because the voters saw through the magic trick. They stopped being distracted by the lights and started watching the hands. And once you've seen the illusion for what it is, you can't unsee it. What happens next won't be decided in press rooms or Senate halls. It'll be decided in living rooms, on phones, in conversations between Americans who've stopped waiting for someone else to fix the system. Because the truth is out there now, and it's not going back in the bottle. Something has shifted permanently. For years, the American political system has relied on repetition. Say the same thing often enough, and people will start to believe it. But this time, repetition failed. Schumer's party, Mamdani's narrative, the entire Washington communication machine, they all ran their scripts, and none of it worked. Because the voters have changed. The audience no longer wants the performance. They want the truth, raw and unfiltered, no matter how uncomfortable it is. And for the first time in decades, that demand has broken through the walls of power. You can see it in the chaos behind closed doors. The Democratic establishment is in full retreat, arguing over who should take the blame, each faction rewriting the story to preserve its own relevance. But the truth doesn't negotiate. It doesn't care about career preservation or spin. It's relentless, and it's now circulating in millions of living rooms, podcasts, and independent feeds, places that no longer bow to Washington's control. Mamdani's collapse is being framed as a personal failure. But everyone knows that's a convenient lie. The real failure is systemic, the result of a culture that rewards dishonesty as long as it's eloquent, that celebrates authenticity only when it's marketable. The real embarrassment isn't Schumer's association with Mamdani. It's the exposure of how many people were willing to lie for him until it stopped being profitable. And that's what truly terrifies them, the possibility that people won't forget this one. There's something almost poetic about the fall of a man who built his career on moral superiority. It's the story of modern politics in miniature, power preaching virtue while practicing deceit. But the real story, the one that history will remember, isn't about Mamdani or Schumer. It's about the voters who finally said, enough. It's about a generation that no longer accepts political theater as governance. For the first time in a long time, the establishment is realizing it can't simply out-talk the truth. Every press release, every damage control interview, every attempt to change the subject only amplifies the betrayal. The more they explain, the less people believe. Because trust, once broken, doesn't repair through language. It repairs through accountability, something Washington hasn't practiced in decades. And yet, that's exactly what's coming. Accountability. It won't arrive in a single headline or investigation. It'll arrive slowly, through a cultural shift, through people who record, who document, who share, who refuse to be gaslit. That's the quiet revolution unfolding right now, ordinary citizens reclaiming the right to know. And once that power transfers back to the people, the elites have no countermeasure. Schumer's greatest humiliation won't be losing an ally. It will be losing control of the narrative. Because when truth becomes decentralized, when every voter can verify, replay, and archive, there's no going back to the days when a headline could rewrite reality. The monopoly on perception is gone. And for those who built their careers manipulating perception, that loss is existential. So where does this leave America? Somewhere both dangerous and hopeful. Dangerous, because the collapse of illusion always creates chaos. Hopeful, because chaos is what truth looks like before it settles. Out of this disorder comes clarity, the realization that politicians serve at the mercy of the informed, not the distracted. That's the point the establishment still hasn't understood. People don't want perfect leaders. They want honest ones. And if they can't find them, they'll build new systems that make dishonesty impossible. That's the future Washington fears, not Trump, not populism, not dissent, but a nation that no longer needs to be managed through dissection. So tonight, as this story continues to unravel, remember this: every exposed lie is a sign that awareness is winning. Every collapse of narrative brings us one step closer to transparency. It's messy, it's painful, but it's progress. And if you believe that truth still matters, if you believe that light is stronger than spin, then don't just watch. Be part of it. Subscribe to the channel, hit like, and leave your thoughts in the comments below. Because this isn't just about politics. It's about reclaiming the power to see clearly in a world built on distraction. Truth isn't given, it's earned. And together, by paying attention, by questioning, by refusing to forget, we're earning it back.